Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're looking into a really celebrated piece of literature, something you actually asked us to explore.
That's right.
We're diving into the story of Layla and Majnun, pulling from, well, various accounts of this classic romance.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe stepping away from the usual stats for a bit.
Yeah.
We're really immersing ourselves in this intense story, Layla and Majnun. It's a tragic love story, 7th century Arabia, originally brought to life by the poet Nizami Ganjavi in his Kamsa.
A major work.
Absolutely. A cornerstone, really.
And our goal here isn't just, a simple plot summary. We want to really dig into what makes this story tick, uncover the themes that still hit home today, and maybe find some, well, surprising angles on it all. It's been captivating people for centuries, after all.
Definitely. And it's more than just like a straightforward romance gone wrong.
Right.
It goes deep into passion, fierce longing, but also, societal rules, those constraints.
Okay.
And there's even this element of spiritual devotion mixed in there.
Fascinating. Okay, so get ready. We're about to unpack a story that's resonated for ages and honestly still tells us a lot about the human heart and society too. So where does this incredible but ultimately, heartbreaking story begin?
Okay, so picture this. 7th century Arabia. We're talking Bedouin tribes.
Right.
And our main characters are Qais ibn al-Mulawa, he'll later become known as Majnun, of course, from the Banu Amir tribe.
Okay.
And Layla bint Mahdi, who's actually from the very same tribe.
Ah, so they're from the same community. How did they first connect? Was it like love at first sight in the middle of the desert?
Actually, no, it starts much more innocently. They meet as children at a tribal school.
School, okay.
Yeah. And both are described as, exceptionally beautiful, intelligent, virtuous kids. It's in those everyday interactions, just being young together, that this deep bond starts to form.
That sounds quite sweet, almost normal.
Mm.
But obviously things don't stay that way, given the name Majnun, the madman. What happens next? How does it escalate?
Well, Qais just gets completely swept away by his feelings for Layla. He's a poet, a gifted one, apparently. So he starts pouring all this intense emotion into verse, writing poems for her. But crucially, he doesn't just keep them to himself.
Oh.
He starts reciting them publicly, telling everyone how much he loves Layla. In marketplaces, out in the open.
Okay, I can already see where this might cause problems. What was the social vibe back then? What lines was he crossing?
It was a very conservative tribal society. Modesty, especially regarding women and family honor, was hugely important.
Right.
So Qais shouting his love from the rooftops, essentially. That was seen as totally scandalous. It breached those codes of conduct, potentially shaming Layla's family. You can imagine the pressure in a small community.
So the first big problem wasn't like a rival suitor, but society itself pushing back against his openness.
Exactly that. Layla's father is, understandably, perhaps furious. He sees Qais' behavior as a massive dishonor, and he flat out refuses any idea of them getting married. Qais, driven by love, maybe a bit naive, actually tries to ask for her hand properly.
He formally proposes. And how did that go?
Badly. He gets rejected, publicly humiliated. And what's really telling is even Qais' own family thought he was out of line.
Really? His own family?
Yeah, they criticized him for his, quote, reckless behavior. They felt it damaged their family's reputation, too. It shows just how strong those social rules were.
Wow. So he's getting it from all sides. You'd think that might make someone, I don't know, back off a bit, tone it down. But that's not what happened with Qais, is it?
Not at all. It seems like all this opposition just fueled the fire. It intensified his love for Layla, made her seem even more precious, maybe.
The forbidden fruit effect.
Kind of, yeah. And it pushed him deeper into despair because he just couldn't imagine life without her. These walls just made the longing unbearable.
Which leads us to that next stage, his descent into madness. That's such a strong phrase. What did that actually look like?
Well, since he couldn't be with Layla, he basically checks out of society. He leaves the settled areas, heads out into the wilderness, the desert,
Right.
and his whole existence changes. He stops caring about conventions, tears his clothes, starts living among the wild animals. His only real companion becomes his poetry, which is still all about Layla, nonstop.
And this is when he gets the name Majnun. It wasn't his given name.
Correct. People see him like this wild, obsessive, seemingly detached from reality, and they start calling him Majnun. It literally means madman, or maybe possessed, like his love had completely taken over his reason, stripped him of his place in the social order.
While Majnun is out there in the desert, what's Layla going through? She's still stuck within that society, isn't she?
Absolutely. Layla's story is one of terrible inner conflict. On the outside, she does what's expected, she's obedient to her family, but inside, she's suffering deeply, silently longing for K's. She's trapped by the same social rules, just in a different way. Her pain is hidden, quiet agony.
And then comes the arranged marriage. That feels like a very deliberate move to just end the whole situation.
It absolutely was. To try and stop the scandal, the gossip fueled by Majnun's continued presence and poetry, her father arranges for her to marry someone else, a man named Ibn Salam.
Ibn Salam. And who was he?
He's described as wealthy, honorable, from a different tribe. The idea was probably to physically remove Layla from the situation, restore the family's standing, a practical, if brutal, solution from their point of view.
Utterly heartbreaking for Layla, though. How does she handle being married to someone else?
Well, she goes through with it. She submits, as was expected, but her heart absolutely isn't in it. It stays firmly with Majnun. Some accounts even say she refused any physical intimacy with Ibn Salam.
Wow.
So she's physically there in the marriage, but emotionally completely absent. It's a kind of passive resistance, maybe.
That must have been incredibly awkward, to say the least. How did Ibn Salam react to her coldness?
Interestingly, the story portrays Ibn Salam as a decent guy. Kind, honorable. Even though Layla is clearly distant, not returning any affection, he treats her respectfully, which almost makes it more complex, right? She's not being mistreated by a cruel husband. She's just bound to a perfectly respectable man she simply cannot love.
So Layla's in this complicated, unhappy marriage, and Majnun is still out in the desert, completely unaware she's married.
Yes, as far as we know. He's just wandering, lost in his world of grief and poetry about Layla, totally cut off from news of her life back in the tribe.
It sounds so isolated. We hear stories about him making friends with animals.
That's right. It's a famous part of the story. He finds companionship with the wild animals, especially gazelles. Maybe he saw something of Layla's beauty or his own wildness in them. He'd recite his poems to them, share his sorrow. It just highlights how profoundly alienated he was from human society at this point.
And then another character enters the picture, Nawfal, a warrior.
Yes, Nawfal. He's described as a noble chieftain or a warrior. He stumbles upon Majnun in the desert, sees his state, hears the poetry, and is just incredibly moved by this depth of suffering.
Right, he pities him.
Deeply. And being a man of action, a warrior, Nawfal decides he has to do something. He vows to help Majnun.
And his plan involves fighting.
Yeah, his solution is pretty direct. He offers to raise an army, wage war against Layla's tribe, defeat them, and basically force them to release Layla so she can be with Majnun.
Wow. Okay, that's quite an intervention. But Majnun's reaction isn't what you'd expect, is it? From someone supposedly driven mad by frustrated love.
Not at all. It's actually quite startling. Majnun pleads with Nawfal not to do it.
Really? Why?
He argues against violence. He says his love for Layla shouldn't cause bloodshed or suffering for anyone else, not even the tribe that rejected him. It shows this incredible depth to his character, maybe. His love wasn't about possession or revenge.
So even in his supposed madness, there's this powerful ethical core.
Fascinating. Okay, so Nawfal backs off. Wow. Do Layla and Majnun ever manage to, well, be together after this?
Not really, no. Their interactions from this point on are described as very fleeting, often secret or just chance encounters, and always filled with this immense sadness because they know they can't truly be united.
Always kept apart.
Yeah, there's always something, the social barriers, the physical distance. It's never a real reunion.
There's that iconic image, isn't there, of Layla sending a message or seeing him from afar. It really drives home that separation.
Exactly. Even when they try to connect, there's this barrier, this unbridgeable gap, and these brief, painful moments. They don't really bring comfort. They just seem to intensify the tragedy, the longing. It's around this time you really feel their earthly love starting to morph into something more spiritual, maybe, a yearning beyond this world.
And then things take an even darker turn. Ibn Salam, Layla's husband, he dies.
He does. He falls ill and dies, which logically you'd think would finally clear the path. Yeah, the legal obstacle's gone. Layla is free.
You'd think so? But the years of suppressed grief, the constant heartache, the separation from Majnun, it had all taken a huge toll on Layla.
So freedom doesn't lead to happiness. It leads to more tragedy.
Tragically, yes. She's just consumed by sorrow, by this lifelong unfulfilled love. Even though she's technically free, she falls ill herself, and she dies. It's like her spirit just couldn't take any more, even when the external barrier was removed.
Oh, that's devastating. And the final scene for Majnun,
Yeah.
it's incredibly powerful.
When Majnun hears that Layla is dead, he's completely destroyed. He rushes to her grave. And there, in this final act of absolute devotion and despair, he weeps, recites more poetry, and then just dies right there beside her tomb.
Such a profoundly sad ending to their time on Earth. But the story often suggests it doesn't entirely end there.
That's right. Many versions imply, or state outright, that their souls are finally united in paradise in the afterlife, that the love so denied on earth finds its perfect fulfillment beyond death.
Which brings us to thinking about the deeper meanings here. There are clearly some major themes running through this, like this idea of earthly love changing into something, well, divine or spiritual.
Absolutely. Majnun's complete devotion to Layla leads him to renounce everything else, society, comfort, reason itself. His love becomes so all-consuming, it takes on the quality of a spiritual quest. For some interpretations, particularly Sufi ones, Layla becomes a symbol for the divine beloved.
And that clash, that stark conflict between what the individual wants, their deep desires, and the rigid rules of their society, that's central, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. It's a powerful commentary on how tradition, tribal honor, family expectations can just crush individual happiness and authentic love. It really makes you question the balance, society's needs versus the individual heart.
The themes of sacrifice and loyalty, too, they're incredibly strong. Both Layla and Majnun stayed true to their love right to the very end, despite everything.
Their faithfulness is extraordinary. Through separation, forced marriage, madness, despair, they never waver in their devotion to each other. It speaks volumes about the depth of their bond, their refusal to compromise that love, even if it cost them their lives.
And that idea of their souls meeting in the afterlife, it offers a kind of resolution, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A final sense of peace or completion denied them in life.
Yeah, it suggests a belief in a love that goes beyond the physical world, beyond time itself. Maybe it offers a bit of solace, the idea that their profound connection wasn't ultimately for nothing, that a higher union was possible.
Okay, so just to kind of wrap up the narrative itself, we have Layla and Majnun, this innocent love starting in 7th century Arabia. It hits immediate societal backlash because Majnun is so open about it.
Right, the scandal.
Which leads to Layla's forced marriage, Majnun fleeing to the desert, becoming the madman, these brief, painful encounters later on.
Full of sorrow.
And then ultimately, their deaths. First Layla after her husband dies, then Majnun at her grave. But with this final hint of a spiritual reunion. And woven through it all are these powerful themes. Intense love, society's constraints, incredible loyalty, and maybe this journey from earthly passion towards something more spiritual.
Yeah. And what's really amazing is just why this story, centuries old, still grabs us.
Right.
It taps into something universal, doesn't it? That experience of intense love, devastating loss, yearning for connection, especially when things stand in your way. It makes you think about how fundamental these feelings are across all time, all cultures.
It really does. And thinking about those strict social pressures back then, it makes you wonder, how have the rules around love changed? Or maybe, in what ways do similar pressures, maybe more subtle ones, still exist today, still shape our choices?
That's a great question.
It feels like Layla and Majnun, this ancient epic, still holds a mirror up to us, reflecting the enduring power and sometimes the tragic complexity of the human heart and the societies we build around it.